From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Hurricane Florence spins toward the East Coast.
It's go time for farmers in the southeast as hurricanes threaten the area. We'll have an update with harvest ahead of the show.
In agribusiness, will corn really add 5 million more acres next season?
You know, the same is true. I mean, guys are combining in the fall and the seed salesman's knocking on the door to ride along.
NAFTA negotiations continue with Canada and the focus is dairy, and Australian farmers face a devastating drought.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. On this 17th anniversary since 9/11, we pause this morning to reflect and remember. Now to the news. The East Coast watching Hurricane Florence intensify in the Atlantic as it makes its way west. The storm expected to bring life-threatening surge, winds, and massive flooding to the coast. It's currently projected to land in the Carolinas late this week or over the weekend. Favorable weather conditions are helping Florence intensify. It's expected to be Category 3 or stronger by the time it makes landfall.
The last time that the Carolina coastline, anywhere in the Carolinas, was hit by a major hurricane was way back in the 1980s when Hurricane Hugo in the late 80s moved ashore near Charleston. And so we have gone 30 years without a major hurricane strike in this part of the country. We've had a lot of minor hurricanes, Category 1s and 2s, but that's a far cry from the damage that a major 3, 4, or 5 hurricane can do. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says Florence could do to the mid-Atlantic what Harvey did to eastern Texas. If the track holds, he expects major coastal damage from wind, waves, and storm surge, adding that it's also possible to see catastrophic inland flooding. Unlike Texas, we have the complication of high terrain. We've got mountains that reach to 3, 4, 5, and 6,000 feet across the central Appalachians. And as that wind comes in from the east, it'll be almost perpendicular to the mountains and could wring out more than 20 inches of rainfall. So we are looking at a 1-2 punch, both with the coastal impacts, the inland impacts, and then of course the flooding could last for days or weeks once you get into some of the inland areas. Rippey says there are a large number of vulnerable crops and commodities in the path of Florence. One of the biggest concerns is the hog industry. This map shows the intense concentration of the industry in North Carolina. Rippey says when Hurricane Floyd hit in September of 1999, tens of thousands of pigs drowned and hog waste washed into waterways. Cotton crops could also see devastation similar to last year's Hurricane Harvey. Now, farmers have been watching Florence and other storms develop for about a week or more. National reporter Betsy Gibbon visited North Carolina last week where producers are pushing to beat the weather.
Machinery rolling through North Carolina fields, common sight for September.
We've been dry lately, which has been optimal for corn harvest. It's kind of a double-edged sword.
As farmers prepare for extreme storms to make landfall.
It is go time. It is go time.
Clinton, North Carolina farmer Chris Naylor pushing hard through harvest for over a week. Luckily, there's been no measurable rainfall before the storm, which means combines can continue to move.
You just try to work as hard as you can prior to the storms just to try to get out what you can.
He hopes to be done harvesting corn before Thursday night when Florence is expected to hit the Carolinas. Tropical storm Gordon made landfall a few days ago. As Naylor waits for Florence, it's expected to drop up to 20 to 30 inches of rain in his area.
We'll either try to put it in storage, we'll go ahead and sell it. We just want to get it out of the field. It's no fun picking corn up off the ground. You lose a tremendous amount of yield.
Nearby is Newton Grove, North Carolina farmer Bartley Warren. With hundreds of acres of corn to harvest, he's hiring custom harvesters to help.
Sometimes you can get the assistance of neighbors, you know, if you need it, but we have 2 machines that normally we try to stay on top of our, get everything out in a timely manner.
But with 1,000 acres of sweet potatoes and 250 acres of tobacco left in the field, there are not enough hands to get everything done.
We still got a lot of acres to ground to cover.
That's why he's moving quick to at least get his corn to storage.
We have a dryer that kind of helps for us to pick high moisture grain, which is a plus for us. And so we do have enough storage to house it if we get in a pinch, that sort of thing.
Reporting for AgDay, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Cold weather in China pushing soybean futures higher Monday. Prices there were on track for their biggest daily gain on record. China's bean futures climbing nearly 5% in early trade on concerns about crop damage due to that cold. The average daily temperature in China's northeastern region fell to 46 degrees over the weekend. While not freezing, it's well below the normal level of 60 degrees. On the trade front, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow says President Trump is willing to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping regarding the escalating trade war. But Kudlow says Beijing needs to show it's open to compromise. Late last week, President Trump telling reporters that he may impose another $267 billion tariff on Chinese imports, and that's on top of the $200 billion he's been threatening in recent weeks. The U.S. already has $50 billion in tariffs on Chinese goods. Those were imposed back in July. Also in China, African swine fever detected in early August has been found in nearly 20 farms across 6 different provinces. That's according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, saying it's almost certain to spread from China to other Asian countries. Now, over the weekend, Japan's Agriculture Ministry confirming that country's first outbreak of swine fever in 26 years, although it's different than the African swine fever found in China. Now, Japan has suspended exports of pork and wild boar meat. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer spending Monday meeting with his counterparts in the European Union. The USTR says ministers will meet again at the end of the month and then continue talks through October. The focus will be on tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. The U.S. and EU currently have a $1 trillion bilateral trade relationship. Let's continue our look at farm country weather with meteorologist Mike Hoffman in the AgDay weather team. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning to you, Clinton. We're kicking things off in Monroe County, Mississippi. Debbie Hinshaw says fall calving is going well. They're getting help from good pasture conditions and plenty of rain. The area counted 3 inches of rain over the weekend. Of course, not all of the state is doing that well. According to the drought monitor, roughly 30% of Mississippi is considered abnormally dry. And Andy Weiser in Roscoe, South Dakota, sending us some corn photos that show below average yields for this area of the state. USDA says South Dakota should see an average yield of 170 bushels per acre. We'll see if that holds when a new report comes out later on this week. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, it's going to be pretty windy across the northern plains. Even to start today, turns windier from Mississippi to northwestern Kansas by the end of the day and a little bit out west. Heading into the day tomorrow, we kind of shift things a little bit, but not much. You can see pretty windy across the northern and central plains and most of the interior portions of the west. We'll talk more about your forecast coming up. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Plan for the unexpected with weather forecast updates. Local forecasts are delivered right to your cell phone each morning, making planning a little bit easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
Crops aren't even harvested yet, but we'll start talking next season's acreage battle. That's early. Angie Setzer joins me at the Agribusiness Desk. And later, drought problems continue in Australia as even hay haulers run out of bales to ship. An update from down under and in the country.
Join Andrew McRae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast that is all about production agriculture. Farming the Countryside is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, the world's largest provider of crop inputs and services.
In agribusiness, plenty of green on the boards to start the week. Let's find out why from the floor of the CME in Chicago.
Soybeans were on the rise. Futures have moved to at the top of a new range, even though the range is kind of tight right now. We've got the market kind of settling down and consolidating somewhat. The big crop and the tariff tensions are still prevailing over these markets, and they are really casting a shadow, keeping the market from really moving much higher. But the good thing is that it isn't moving any lower, so thank goodness for that. Corn was mixed today. The farmers selling of any of their corn crop, certainly from last year, has been very slow, so it hasn't pushed the market any lower. And right now we're a little bit below the actual value, the growing value, and that's why the market's kind of stalled out here a little bit. Cattle was firm. It seems like some of that there's been strong cash buying coming in and really lifted the market somewhat higher. And I think that there was that kind of underpinned the prices to move to make a new high, but it did bring in a little bit of selling. And I know that there has been more beef demand coming in, and that's strengthening the market, and we actually expect that demand to last throughout the winter time. So overall, we're looking for a market to continue to climb. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk today, we've got Angie Setzer, Citizens Grain. Angie, let's talk about well, something we usually don't talk about till November or December. Are we going to see more corn acres next year?
Right.
I mean, we haven't even harvested this crop yet.
It's like Christmas decorations in the store. Pretty soon it's going to be Memorial Day and your Santa's going to be hanging out in Lowe's. So,
yeah, that's right.
You know, the same is true. I mean, guys are combining in the fall and the seed salesman's knocking on the door to ride along so we can figure out what we're going to plant next year, right?
Sure.
But the reality is at this point in time, that has been a pretty common conversation as of late. That's part of the reason that corn can't separate itself from soybeans. This idea that, oh, with the tariffs in place, soybeans need to trade significantly lower. That's been the conversation. And as a result, if corn stays where it's at based on ratio, well, obviously folks are going to transfer over. And so there's been this common talk lately where we're going to see 4 to 5 million acres more of corn next spring. That's a lot. It's a lot, but I don't see it happening.
You don't?
I don't.
And
no.
tell me why.
Well, for one, we had $6 wheat happen in August when folks were making their decisions on winter wheat planting.
Right.
You know, and at this point in time, from what I'm hearing on the countryside, it's been pretty difficult at this point now to source winter wheat seed, which tells me
that there's
a lot of interest in planting wheat here over the next couple months. So that's the one process. I think there at that point you're going to see what would be corn acres. So if you take this year's corn soybean spread, go ahead and chop out about 2 million of that and probably put it onto wheat, which means if you're looking at wheat right now and you're planting wheat and you're trying to figure out what to do with July 19, may not hurt to do something if you haven't already.
Do something.
And so I think you see a piece of that pie go in that direction, and I think you're seeing some specialty crops. And to be completely honest, most folks that I talk to focus pretty intently on their rotation more than anything else. Now there are some that have had beans on beans on beans because the price has been good. They're going to plant corn. But at the same time, they're going to be looking at the fact that they have to plant kind of what their ground dictates as well. And you may see some cash flow play in because you're still getting more money for $8. You've got a significant amount of cash flow coming in when you ship 1,000 bushel of soybeans versus 1,000 bushel of $4 corn.
Yeah, of course. So. Well, we'll have you back in, over Memorial Day or sometime before that to talk about this same thing again. But appreciate you giving us some insights.
Thanks for
We'll be
having
back
me.
with more Ag Day in just a minute.
For help solving your cash grain problems, call Angie Setzer with Citizens LLC at 800-858-3738.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman here. Mike, as we watch this hurricane develop out in the Atlantic Ocean, what are you seeing?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a major hurricane, probably hitting the Carolinas, and then it's going to sit there. And that may be the most devastation for ag of anything is the heavy rains that are going to come. So there are multiple factors, obviously, with Florence, which is just on the edge of the map right now. We'll step out of the way again once it gets a little bit closer to the coast here. But we're also watching another system, which could turn into a tropical storm in the northwestern Gulf about the same time Florence is hitting, the Carolinas. So that's still something we'll watch. You know, with a hurricane coming in like this, you'll notice the weather map doesn't move much in the eastern part of the country, or everything kind of gets shunted off to the north. And that's what's happening. We end up with a stationary front from Texas all the way into the northeast. Showers and thunderstorms along that. Also, we have an area of low pressure in South Texas. That's going to put down a fair amount of rain in places that might get a whole bunch more later this week into this weekend from a very slow moving tropical storm. So we have two things on the map that really could cause some real issues, but obviously Florence is the major one. Storm system coming into the Pacific Northwest with some showers as we head through the afternoon hours tomorrow. Heading into the morning hours tomorrow, or the next day then on Wednesday, sorry about that, you can see the stationary front from Louisiana into the northeast. Florence is starting to get a little bit closer. We're still watching the area of low pressure in the central Gulf. Heading through the day then, Florence is just taking a beeline for the Carolinas. Obviously, we're not sure exactly where that's going to hit, but it's going to be probably Thursday. And then it may sit there for 3 or 4 days somewhere in the southern Appalachians. And the Appalachians are kind of an area where you get upslope as well. And so you can end up, I hate to guess how much rain, but there could easily be 20 to 30 inches in some areas as we head into the weekend. Well, not that much over the past 24 hours. You can see from the northeast into southeast Texas. Decent amounts, though, over a 36-hour period there. You can see some areas will get several inches along the coast in Texas. Now, checking out temperatures. Highs very pleasant, 70s, Great Lakes, 80s, not too bad along the Gulf Coast. Some 60s and 70s in the northern Rockies. Low temperatures tonight going to drop off into the 50s once again in the Great Lakes and the northern plains. And then you head into the day tomorrow. Still comfortable in the northeast, pretty humid in the southwest. Or southeast. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Fresno, California. First of all, lots of sunshine and hot, high of 96. Kansas City, Missouri, beautiful, lots of sunshine, high of 81. And Charlotte, North Carolina, shower and thunderstorm in some areas, kind of the storm before the storm, high of 81.
When we come back, we'll talk dairy, including an update on NAFTA negotiations. And later, hay shipments are slowing down in Australia as haulers run out of bales to deliver. A look at the ongoing drought facing farmers in New South Wales. In our dairy report, a new week and NAFTA negotiations continue in Washington. The U.S. and Canada continuing to work through lingering issues that divide the two nations. On the list, Canada's dairy policy. U.S. officials are pushing for greater access to that dairy market. Sources saying Lighthizer knows that unless the U.S. garners more of Canada's dairy market access, the issue could hurt votes for a final NAFTA agreement in Congress. The U.S. and Canada have until the end of this month to settle their differences before the text of the U.S. agreement with Mexico is made public. Low milk prices continuing to stress dairy farms across the country. The Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection reporting that the state lost another 47 dairy farms in August. Wisconsin has lost nearly 600 farms in the last year alone. The total number of licensed dairy farms in Wisconsin now stands at 8,372. It's a similar story for small farms all across the country. Owners of Cow Comfort Inn Dairy in Union Bridge, Maryland, both grew up on dairies, but they say their largest challenge as a first-generation farm is keeping their business afloat.
We've got super tight margins. We're not a multi-generational family farm that has, years of equity build up. So we really have to work with a sharpened pencil every month.
A revised dairy program in the new farm bill may help slow the rate of farm departures. It roughly triples the benefits to smaller farms than the current margin protection program. It's not flooding, but drought that's crippling farms in Australia. An update from New South Wales today on In the Country.
In the Country, sponsored by the all-new Kubota Sidekick, a utility vehicle that lets you climb more, cover more, tow more, and enjoy more. Visit KubotaUSA.com.
It's not just the U.S. facing challenges from weather. In the Australian state of New South Wales, ongoing drought means there's now little hay for farmers to feed their sheep. It could mean the end of the road for hay haulers who for years have transported feed to farms across southeast Australia. As dawn breaks at his farm in Victoria, hay hauler Dennis Walker is preparing for an emotional trip that might be one of his last. He and his wife Judy Anthony have hit the road for 30 years, using highways and back roads to reach farmers. Their precious cargo is hay. This year, he has little left for expectant farmers and their flocks.
I shudder for even the thought. I absolutely shudder. They are in diabolicals.
In a truck that's clocked more than 1 million miles, Walker's adding a few more, winding his way to New South Wales, where roads become dirt. The drought hits home. Kangaroos search the dust for food. Sheep are starving.
Breaks my heart that people can't offload them. They're just dying in the paddock.
Walker says he's never seen it like this before.
This is as bad as it gets. The cattle are walking bags of bones.
A much-needed pit stop brings some relief before a setback, a flat tire. But the pair push on to a sheep station deep in the grip of drought. Walker isn't the only contractor who's running out of hay. It's now getting almost impossible to source even the poorer quality bales demanding top price. Craig Morton's property has only had a trickle of rain in 2 years. He's pinning all of his hopes on rain this September.
It's really dried right out, so it's hurting really bad.
Much of Australia's southeast is struggling with drought. The drought conditions in New South Wales this year have been the driest and most widespread since 1965. State officials say 100% of New South Wales, more than 300,000 square miles, is now in drought. For Walker, it's another job done. he and Anthony get back in their truck for the long journey home, hoping conditions change soon. Prayers for the folks there. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in on this September 11th. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.